In the heart of West Africa, where the golden sands of the Sahel stretch endlessly under a blazing sun, lies Burkina Faso, a land whose name means the homeland of upright people. For generations, its story has been one of struggle and resilience, a tale whispered by the wind through the branches of ancient baobab trees. But one night, under a sky glittering with stars, an extraordinary dream would stir the soul of the nation and rekindle a fire long buried in the dust of forgotten hopes. The village of Zinyare slept quietly, its mud-brick homes glowing silver under the light of a full moon. In a small hut at the edge of the village, an 80-year-old man named Naba tossed restlessly on his cot. Naba was no ordinary elder. Decades ago, he had fought alongside Captain Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader who had dared to dream of a Burkina Faso free from poverty, corruption, and foreign control. Sankara had been a brother to him, a man who carried books in one hand and a rifle in the other, who planted trees while preaching self-reliance. But Sankara was betrayed and killed in 1987 by his closest friend, Blaise Compaoré, a man who later ruled the country with greed and iron fists. Naba had never forgiven himself for surviving that dark day. That night, as the Harmattan wind rattled the dry leaves outside, Naba felt a strange warmth fill the room. A soft golden light seeped through the cracks in the walls, and suddenly, there he was, Thomas Sankara, standing tall in his faded military cap and simple cotton tunic, his smile as bright as the day Naba had last seen him. The room smelled faintly of the mint tea Sankara used to drink during their late-night strategy meetings. "Naba, old friend," Sankara said, his voice steady and clear, like a drumbeat cutting through silence. "The tree we planted has been uprooted, but its roots run deep. The soil is still fertile. You must tell Ibrahim Traoré. Tell him to dare." As Sankara spoke, the air around them shimmered, and Naba saw visions. Children laughing in classrooms powered by the sun, women in vibrant dresses, harvesting fields of golden grain, young engineers building wells in villages once parched by drought. Then, as quickly as he had appeared, Sankara faded, leaving behind only a single phrase echoing in the darkness. "The enemy is not poverty, Naba. It is resignation." When Naba awoke, his wrinkled hands trembled. Clutched in his palm was a small bronze star pendant, a token Sankara had given him years ago, engraved with the words, "Justice, freedom, dignity." The dream's urgency burned inside him like a fever. He knew what he had to do. He would travel to Ouagadougou, the capital, to deliver Sankara's message to Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young soldier who had recently taken power, vowing to fix a nation fractured by violence, poverty, and despair. The journey to Ouagadougou was long and treacherous. Roads once built with pride during Sankara's era had crumbled into jagged paths, swallowed by sand and neglect. Bandits lurked in the shadows, and the heat of the dry seasons scorched the earth. But Naba was determined. He hitched rides on rickety trucks hauling goats and sacks of millet, walked for miles under the punishing sun, and slept in villages where families shared their last cup of water with him. Along the way, he saw the scars of a broken nation. Clinics without medicine, schools without roofs, and murals of Sankara's face peeling off walls, faded by time and indifference. In a town called Koudougou, Naba met a young woman named Aissata. She was a widow with 3 children, her hands calloused from hours of pounding she-nuts into butter under a relentless sun. "I sell this at the market for pennies," she told him, wiping sweat from her brow. "If I had a machine to grind the nuts, I could feed my children and send them to school, but who cares about a woman like me?" Her words weighed heavily on Naba. He thought of Sankara's belief that women were the backbone of the nation, how he had appointed them to leadership roles and banned forced marriages. Now they were back to being invisible. Days later, in a dusty mining town near Boromo, Naba encountered Idris, a teenage boy whose eyes were hollow with exhaustion. Idris had dropped out of school to dig for gold in illegal mines controlled by warlords. "What's the point of learning?" the boy muttered, kicking a stone. "My father died in that pit. My mother says there's no future here." Naba's heart ached. He remembered Sankara's literacy campaigns, the way he'd turned army barracks into classrooms. Now, children were trading pencils for pickaxes, Each encounter deepened Naba's resolve. Sankara was right. The real enemy was resignation, the slow surrender to hopelessness. By the time Naba reached Ouagadougou, his bones were weary, but his spirit blazed. The presidential palace loomed ahead, a stark fortress guarded by soldiers in fatigues. Inside, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a lean, intense man of 35 with a beard trimmed close, paced his office. Maps of Burkina Faso covered the walls, dotted with red markers showing territories overrun by jihadists. Reports of starving children and failed crops piled high on his desk. Traoré had seized power in a whirlwind of promises, but the weight of the nation's crises was crushing. How could he fight terrorists, feed millions, and rebuild a country gutted by decades of corruption? When Naba arrived, the guards scoffed. "Another old man with a fairy tale," one muttered. But Traoré, overhearing, stormed into the corridor. "Bring him in," he barked. Traoré had grown up on stories of Sankara. His father had been a farmer who'd received land during Sankara's reforms. To dismiss an elder was to dishonor the past. In Traoré's sparse office, Naba wasted no time. He recounted the dream in vivid detail, Sankara's radiant presence, the visions of a Burkina Faso reborn. He pressed the bronze star pendant into Traoré's palm. "He said the soil is still fertile, Captain. He told you to dare." For a long moment, Traoré stared at the pendant, his mind racing. Sankara's ghost? A hallucination? Yet Naba's words stirred something in him, a memory of his father's voice. "We once had a leader who believed we could be more than beggars." "But times have changed," Traoré said finally, his voice rough. "Sankara didn't face drones, climate disasters, foreign mining companies sucking us dry. How do I fight all this?" Naba leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Sankara fought with ideas, Captain. He planted trees to hold back the desert. He built vaccines factories when the world said it was impossible. You think drones are stronger than the will of a people who've survived centuries of storms? Teach a girl to code, and she'll hack those drones. Give farmers seeds that defy drought, and they'll feed the nation." Sankara didn't fear the future. He grabbed it by the throat and made it obey. That night, Traoré couldn't sleep. He wandered the palace gardens, Sankara's star pendant clutched in his fist. The words "dare to invent the future" looped in his mind. By dawn, he'd scribbled a plan, a blueprint for a revolution. He called it Operation Baobab. Within weeks, the nation buzzed with action. Solar-powered tech hubs sprang up in villages, where teenagers like Idris learned to install solar panels and repair water pumps. Women like Aissata formed cooperatives, pooling resources to buy machinery that turned shea nuts into butter and soap for markets overseas. Traoré ordered the army to dig trenches for a green wall, a vast belt of baobabs and acacias to reclaim the desert, employing former jihadists who swapped guns for shovels in exchange for amnesty. But Traoré's boldest move was the people's courts. Corrupt officials and embezzlers were hauled into town squares, their crimes broadcast on crackling village radios. A former minister who'd stolen millions to build a mansion in France was sentenced to dig wells in the scorching north. The crowds cheered, not out of vengeance, but relief. For the first time, justice felt real. At a rally in Ouagadougou, Traoré stood on the same podium Sankara had used decades earlier. "They call us a poor country," he thundered, the crowd's roar swelling like a wave. "But poverty is a lie told by thieves. Our land is rich. Our people are strong. We will make the desert bloom." The changes were slow, uneven, but undeniable. In Koudougou, Aissata's cooperative exported shea butter to Europe, earning enough to build a school where her daughters studied engineering. Idris, trained in solar technology, wired his village with lights that glowed like fireflies against the night. Jihadist groups, starved of recruits, began to fracture. Why die for empty promises when life could be lived with dignity? Years later, on a cool evening in Zinyaré, Naba sat beneath a young baobab tree, its branches thick with green leaves. Children raced past, their laughter mingling with the hum of a nearby solar grid. A journalist from the city asked him, "Was it the dream that saved us?" Naba chuckled, adjusting his glasses. Sankara's dream was just a mirror. It showed us the power we already had. Traoré didn't need magic, he needed to remember who we are. In Ouagadougou, a sprawling mural now covers the old Parliament building. Painted in bold strokes of red, green and gold, it depicts Sankara and Traoré standing side by side, their hands resting on the trunk of a giant baobab. Its roots dig deep into the earth, and its branches stretch toward a sunburst inscribed with words every Burkinabe child now knows by heart: dare to invent the future. The story of Burkina Faso is still being written. Droughts still come, challenges remain. But in the markets, the schools and the fields, a new truth has taken root. A nation is not built by one leader, or even two, but by the stubborn courage of ordinary people who choose to hope. When an old man's dream meets the grit of the young, even the driest soil can surprise you.